1.7%, hitting a 5-week low. And Japan's top oil refiner has halted operations of 3 refineries in Sendai, Kashima and Negishi. But one installation in Chiba is on fire. It's still ablaze. A tsunami warning is now in effect for 53 countries and territories, as we've been reporting. There are 8 people confirmed dead so far, and we're hearing reports of people missing. Of course, these figures are likely to rise given the devastating footage we've been seeing so far in the past few hours. An emergency disaster response team has been set up to respond to the quake. Japan's Prime Minister has made a public address on national television. He promised the government will do all it can to secure the country and minimize damage. He said some nuclear power stations have been closed down, but that there's been no reports of any kind of leakage. That's radiation leakage that he was talking about there. And he's calling upon the Japanese people to keep a watch on television and radio reports and to act calmly. Al Jazeera senior meteorologist Steph Galter joins me now, live in the studio. Steph, thanks again for joining us. A few developments in the past few minutes. One, we're hearing from Hawaii. They're now on, well, the watch has now turned into an evacuation order. People are being asked to move away from the coastline. The other is NOAA, that's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency in the United States, is now saying that the whole of the Pacific Basin is now a tsunami warning area.
I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. And the problem with tsunamis is they actually move quite fast. They can move at around 700 kilometers per hour. And that's because they effectively move like shallow waves because they have such a long wavelength. They just ripple along the surface. So they can move incredibly fast. Having said that, fortunately, the Pacific's absolutely massive. So although they move relatively fast, we still have a while before it will actually hit. So we've got time to evacuate people like we're seeing in Hawaii and elsewhere where we're likely to be hit.
Now, another alarming thing that we've also just heard in the past few minutes, the Japanese authorities now saying that they expect another strong earthquake.
Yes. Statistically, it is very likely that we are going to get some more earthquakes that are going to be strong. We've already seen aftershocks that have been over 7 in magnitude, and that would be a very large and potentially devastating earthquake if it happened on its own. But after this 8.9 earthquake, a lot of the buildings, a lot of the structures are likely to be damaged anyway. So another big hit on that, it could well bring more down. It's likely to be worse than just a 7 magnitude earthquake on its own after this one.
Now, when we talk about seismic activity, of course, Japan is prone to earthquakes. It's not the first time it's happened there. It's not going to be the last time it'll happen there. What exactly is taking place on the surface of the Earth?
We've got this picture showing the different plates that we've got around Japan. We've got the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate to the east of Japan, and then to the west we've got the Eurasian plate and the North American plate. And what's happening is the two on the east are going towards the west, so they're hitting each other, and then eventually the two on the east are actually being subducted underneath that other plate. It's happening around 8 centimeters a year, which might not sound much, but it's actually quite fast. And so as it goes under, the pressure all builds up until eventually the pressure is too much, and then it will let go. And it's that letting go that causes an earthquake. And subduction is the worst type of earthquake if you're looking to avoid a tsunami, because as the earth gets dragged underneath, it will get pulled and pulled until suddenly it'll flick back. And it's that flicking motion that will cause this tidal wave, and that's what we're seeing now. And it's no surprise that the word tsunami is a Japanese word. That's where we saw them first. That's where they were noticed first. And it actually means a harbour wave in Japanese.
Right, and we're looking at a picture of the wave right now. Getting back to the surface, as we can see over there with that wave barreling down towards the coastline. The waves that are caused by the earthquake here, with this warning that the whole of the Pacific Basin is now under a watch or a warning, we're talking about a vast area of ocean, aren't we?
That's right. I mean, usually when you think of something moving a great deal, like if you have a little toy and you push it across a desk, the friction will slow it down somewhat. But because with an ocean, there's not a great deal of friction there. So although, yes, if you're very close to it, you will have a bigger wave, even if you're a very long way away, you can still have a very significant wave. When we had the tsunami of 2007 in Indonesia, that created a wave that went all the way across towards Sri Lanka, then it hit Sri Lanka, then it went across towards Kenya. Even Kenya saw that. So yeah, they can travel vast distances.
And how good is the science got right now? Because, I mean, we had this earthquake. I mean, this is very large. We've been told it's the 7th most powerful one in history, and we're expecting another powerful earthquake. So, in terms of predicting what's going to happen, how good is it?
Not so good, to be honest. We're very good at predicting that there will be, statistically speaking, there will be aftershocks, there will be strong, then they'll gradually decrease, and then things will return to normal. But we still didn't know that this earthquake was going to be this strong. We didn't know that it was happening. Even on Wednesday, when we saw quite a lot of seismic activity in this area, we didn't know that those were pre-shocks until now we've got this massive 8.9 earthquake. We can look back and say, that's what those were. They were just pre-shocks. But we had no way of knowing that until this one hit.
And the best defense that all these countries have is just to tell their people to move away.
That's right. There's a series of buoys around the Pacific, and those can tell you how the wave is travelling, how fast it's travelling, and how bad it is. Because remember, over deep water, the waves are actually really very negligible. You often can't see them. It's only as they go into shallow water, the waves actually amplify, and then they become big. So when they're travelling over the very deep Pacific, you might not know they were there unless we've got this whole series of buoys, which fortunately we do. So we can now give a lot more warning than we could in the past.
Okay, Steph, thank you very much for that. And we're hearing from the relief agency, the International Committee of the Red Cross. Its biggest concern is the tsunami warning, which is now higher than some Pacific islands. Jose Borrero is a tsunami scientist in New Zealand. He said the whole Pacific Rim is under a tsunami watch.
Given what's happened in Japan, we should, definitely keep aware of it. There's a lot of travel time until the first waves reach Hawaii, but the real-time buoys located in the Pacific have recorded this event, and it's on the order of 1 meter in the open ocean at this point in time. The fact that it was a shallow earthquake makes it worse in terms of the potential for tsunami generation, and that was one of the first things that actually perked my ears up when I saw the initial reports. Now, the initial reports, of course, the initial information about depth is usually not very well constrained. The information that comes out in the first few hours after the event until more data is processed. But the fact that the initial estimates put it so shallow is a cause for concern.
It is 9 hours GMT, just over 3 hours since one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded struck Japan. Tsunami waves have crashed ashore, sweeping away everything in their path on Honshu Island. 8 people have been confirmed dead so far. The fear is many more have died in this disaster. Boats were sent crashing under a bridge and cars were swept away too across northeast Japan. Out at sea, tsunami waves lined up to crash ashore with devastating results. Other countries across the Pacific are also on tsunami alert, including Russia, Taiwan, and as far across the Pacific Ocean as Hawaii. Sirens have sounded in Honolulu. In all, 53 countries are on alert. Large ships were capsized by the power of the tsunami waves. All Japanese ports have been shut down. As well as the human cost, the flood damage bill is expected to be enormous. An oil refinery is ablaze. Firefighters are unable to control the inferno in Chiba Prefecture, east of the capital Tokyo. Fires are burning across northern Japan after natural gas pipes shattered and ignited. Japan's network of nuclear power stations are declared safe so far. Airline passengers flocked to the roof of Sendai Airport as 10-meter tsunami waves flooded the terminal and washed over the runway. And the moment the giant quake struck, the lights went out on television. Journalists, search and rescue teams are being mobilized with offers of help already flooding in from around the world. Japan's Prime Minister says major damage has been done and help is on the way. Our correspondent Harry Fawcett is in Kuala Lumpur with the latest. Harry, you're watching. Hi, Harry, if you're with us.
Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the alarming developments we've just heard from the International Committee of the Red Cross is that some of these tsunami waves could be higher than some of the Pacific Islands.
Indeed, and as this wave carries on its progress across the Pacific, we're going to be finding out exactly what the effects are on the islands and on the nations that surround the Pacific Basin. We're told that Hawaii, the islands of Hawaii, will be hit by this tsunami in about just over 4 hours' time at 13:07 GMT. Already the warnings have gone out to people in low-lying areas, coastal areas there, to evacuate their homes. Similar warnings in the Philippines, similar warnings in parts of Taiwan, and also further north in Russia's Kuril Islands, that they've evacuated about 11,000 people there. Now, one interesting line that I've just been past, which whose significance isn't clear yet, so let's just put a bit of a health warning on it. But from the Kyoto News Agency, they're saying that the operator of the Fukushima No. 1 nuclear power plant reported an abnormality on Friday following a powerful earthquake which hit a wide area in northeastern Japan, including Fukushima Prefecture. Now, Fukushima is next to Miyagi Prefecture, Miyagi being the one that was closest to the epicenter of the earthquake. The industry ministry saying this, they're saying that the system to cool reactor cores in case of emergency stopped at the No. 1 and No. 2 reactors of the plant. That plant is operated by Tokyo Electric Power Company. Now, it's not clear what the effect of that has been. It's not clear if they've restarted that cooling operation either. What I can say is that the Prime Minister of Japan, Naoto Kan, in his address to the nation, said that he'd had no reports of any radiation leakage, any significant problems at the nuclear power plants. They're all designed to shut down when their sensors detect a significant earthquake, and that's what a good number of them did. Others that weren't sufficiently affected by the earthquake continued to operate. This is the first indication that something might have gone wrong, even if only to the slightest extent. It's not clear that this has any further ramification, but it is the first indication that something did go wrong at one of the nuclear power plants.
Right, and we're also hearing from a US government agency telling us that the whole of the Pacific Basin is now under tsunami watch. Hawaii authorities saying that they're asking people in some of the outlying islands there to evacuate as well, and that's a pretty fair distance away from where the epicenter of this earthquake was initially.
Indeed, it's going to take the tsunami about 6 hours in total to reach Hawaii. It's going to take a similar amount of time to get down towards the more southerly areas in the Philippines. We were told by a seismologist in New Zealand that it would take about 12 hours to reach the New Zealand coastline. Obviously, the energy of the tsunami to some extent does dissipate the further it goes, and the level of preparedness, the time for evacuations to take place increases. And so there are advantages obviously to being further away from the epicenter. But as our senior meteorologist, Steph Golter, was just saying, these waves do travel very fast and they travel very far, and there's not much to get in their way before they reach low-lying coastal areas. So even if they won't be as big or as powerful as the ones which have devastated parts of eastern Japan, but they could nonetheless cause significant damage.
Yeah, and the death toll, the casualty toll that we have right now, confirmed 8 people dead, but that toll is expected to rise because there are many people who are missing. Harry, for the sake of our viewers who are joining us as we continue with our breaking news coverage on this earthquake disaster in Japan, bring us, or remind us rather, of this particular part of Japan, this area where the earthquake has struck.
It struck on the northeastern, just off the northeastern coast of Honshu Island. Honshu is the main island of Japan. It lies in the middle, really, of the Japanese string of islands, Hokkaido being the most northerly, Okinawa being the most southerly. Honshu is the main island. It's the one which houses Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, the most famous parts of Japan. It's also the most densely populated. Tokyo, for instance, is one of, if not the most densely populated and biggest cities in the world at about 30 million people. The biggest city near to the epicenter was that of Sendai. And you're looking at the airport, Sendai Airport, we believe, there, which was struck by a 10-meter wave, according to reports which came from that airport. Not just the airport being struck, but also the city itself hit by the earthquake. We were told that an inn inside Sendai crumbled to the ground, containing people who had staying in that inn inside, and many people were believed to have been buried, many missing across the country. And in fact, I've just been given a wire from the Agence France-Presse news agency. It says that the Japanese quake toll is up to 19 dead, 19 people now dead, according to Japanese media, that being reported by the Agence France-Presse. We can only expect this number to carry on climbing as the hours pass.
As you say, the media are reporting, Harry, that 19 people are dead, although we are getting a figure of 5 confirmed dead, and this is coming from the Japanese government telling us that 5 people have been killed in this disaster.